This painting was created by Leonardo da Vinci almost 600 years ago, and even today, experts are still debating its meaning. In 2012, an X-ray and ultraviolet light analysis allowed researchers to look beneath the surface of the painting, searching for clues about what was going through Leonardo's mind as he worked on it. And the result was unexpected. Originally, the woman wasn't holding any creature in her arms. The ermine, that small white animal now so central to the composition, was added later by Leonardo himself. But the great question is why? What made Leonardo include it? Some believe it could be a direct reference to the young woman's lover, who also happened to be Leonardo's patron. Others think the ermine carries a symbolic meaning, a hidden clue about the model's identity or the nature of their relationship. Whatever the answer may be, one thing is certain. This creature completely transforms the interpretation of the painting, and this small detail might be yet another proof of Leonardo da Vinci's genius, the key that could change what we think we know about one of the most enigmatic paintings of the Renaissance. Leonardo da Vinci painted Lady with an Ermine at least a decade before his most famous work, the Mona Lisa. Both paintings portray a woman in a three-quarter profile, a remarkably innovative perspective for the time, allowing us, as viewers, to feel a greater sense of closeness and movement within the scene. Even so, compared to the Mona Lisa, this painting remains far less known, yet in my opinion, it deserves the same level of admiration, if not more. It stands as a masterful example of composition, dynamism, and Leonardo's unmatched genius, as we'll see later on. This painting was commissioned by Ludovico Sforza, the same man who ordered the Last Supper, who at the time was the Duke of Milan and one of Leonardo's regular patrons. It is believed that the portrait depicts Cecilia Gallerani, the Duke's young mistress, who was only 16 years old at the time. In her arms, she holds a white weasel, also known as an ermine, which she gently caresses. The way she cradles the animal humanizes their connection and creates an atmosphere of tenderness. Her features possess a radiant liveliness, qualities that must have pleased the young sitter, as it is believed she took the painting with her when she and Ludovico were forced to part ways. Leonardo's great achievement in this painting was reaching an extraordinary level of naturalism at a time when the techniques of realism were still in development. Cecilia's posture conveys a sense of spontaneity and life as she turns slightly to look beyond the frame. It has been suggested that this gesture might represent the moment when Ludovico enters the room and she turns to greet him. One of the key elements that reinforces this realism is the even lighting throughout the composition. The light enters from the upper right corner and descends diagonally toward the lower left, bathing both the woman and the animal in a soft, balanced glow. Thanks to this gradual transition of light, the painting gains a striking sense of natural clarity. You can see how Leonardo emphasizes Cecilia's graceful movement by having her turn her head beyond the frontal plane, allowing her face to be illuminated with precision against a dark background. Several details in the painting reveal that she was a woman of refined taste and remarkably modern style for her time. Draped over her shoulder is a garment known as a spernia, a type of decorative shawl that opens gracefully, covering roughly a quarter of her arm's length. Her hairstyle is equally elegant. Cecilia wears her hair gathered in a corzone, also known as a Spanish braid, which falls over her shoulders and is complemented by a delicate cap positioned at the nape of her neck. This cap is held in place by a lenza, a thin silk ribbon tied around her forehead. Over it, a transparent veil softly covers her cheeks, adding a touch of delicacy and sophistication to the portrait. Before the 1450s, portraits painted by Italian artists usually depicted their subjects in strict profile. This lateral perspective allowed for precise rendering of facial features while maintaining an air of elegant discretion, appropriate for individuals of high status. At the time, portrait commissions came mostly from members of the elite who were more interested in projecting an idealized image of their social position than in achieving absolute realism. However, around 1430, artists in Northern Europe began experimenting with a new perspective, the three-quarter pose. This position, more natural and dynamic, allowed for a greater sense of movement, character, and humanity within the portrait. Over time, this trend spread to Italy and completely transformed the art of portraiture. One of the earliest surviving Italian examples using this composition is Portrait of a Man by Andrea del Castagno, painted around 1450. It's fascinating to compare the two works. Castagno's portrait, full of strength and character, takes advantage of the new three-quarter pose, allowing the sitter to look beyond the frame and establish a direct connection with the viewer. You can notice details such as the man's hand gripping his tunic, a gesture that conveys pride and determination. Leonardo, however, goes much further. Cecilia's posture is more complex, and the details are far more subtle. Her extended hand, for example, is painted with extraordinary precision. You can see the contours, the texture of her skin, even the faint crease between her index and middle fingers. Another revealing comparison is between Lady with an Ermine and a contemporary portrait by Sandro Botticelli. In his portrait of a young man, the sitter appears in a more frontal pose, with a clear expression of personality visible in the tilt of his head and the gesture of his hand. However, Botticelli's work lacks the play of light and shadow that Leonardo uses so masterfully to give his portrait volume and depth. When viewed side by side, it becomes evident how the turned posture of Lady with an Ermine introduces an entirely new sense of energy. This movement creates a contrast of light and shadow that makes Botticelli's work, by comparison, appear much flatter. For an artist who painted so few portraits, between 10 and 15, according to most estimates, Leonardo's impact on the evolution of portraiture was nothing short of extraordinary. Now we come to the central debate surrounding this painting. As I mentioned earlier, there's little doubt that the woman portrayed here is Cecilia Gallerani, the mistress of Leonardo's Milanese patron Ludovico Sforza. However, the real controversy lies in the symbolism and meaning behind the fascinating detail of the ermine resting in her arms. But before we continue, I'd like to take just a few seconds to remind you that if you'd like to have this masterpiece in your own collection, you can find it on our website. More than 700 historical artworks are part of our catalogue, and you can choose your favorite to hang in your home. Shipping is completely free worldwide, and just like in the video you're watching, with our reproductions, you can turn your house into your very own personal museum. You'll find a link in the description to explore the full collection. Now then, let's continue. Although the animal we see in this painting is far too large to be a real ermine, according to experts, its presence is largely symbolic. Traditionally, the ermine, a white weasel during winter, symbolized purity and virtue. In medieval belief, it was said to prefer death over soiling its fur. As Leonardo himself described in his notebooks, the ermine, out of moderation, never eats but once a day, and it would rather let itself be captured by hunters than take refuge in a dirty lair in order not to stain its purity. Under this interpretation, Leonardo may have intended to highlight the chastity and nobility of his model, Cecilia Gallerani, who was the mistress of Duke Ludovico Sforza. However, this reading is somewhat contradictory, since Cecilia was not his legitimate wife, but his lover. For that reason, some historians believe the symbol of purity was used ironically or as a way to elevate her image in the eyes of the Milanese court. Another widely accepted theory is that the ermine directly refers to Ludovico Sforza himself, who was nicknamed Ermelino, Italian for ermine, after receiving the Order of the Ermine from the King of Naples in 1488. If this is true, the animal would serve as a metaphor for the Duke, with the painting representing Cecilia holding her protector or lover in her arms, disguised as the ermine. This interpretation gives the work a more intimate and political tone, functioning as a subtle declaration of belonging or power within the courtly context of Milan. Finally, some scholars argue that Leonardo chose the ermine for purely aesthetic or philosophical reasons. He admired animals and saw in the ermine an example of balance and natural elegance, qualities that aligned with his ideal of harmony between humanity and nature. In that sense, the ermine may not carry a specific moral or political message, but instead serve as part of Leonardo's pursuit of compositional harmony, balancing the body's movement with the direction of the gaze. Recent X-ray studies of the painting have revealed 3 distinct stages in its creation, during which Leonardo gradually developed the final composition. In the first stage, there was no animal at all. In the second, he added a smaller grey ermine, and only in the third did that grey creature transform into the white, muscular ermine we see today. Thus, the true reason Leonardo decided to include this animal remains a mystery. It could have been a reference to his patron, an aesthetic decision, or perhaps a hidden message that, even after nearly 600 years, humanity has yet to decipher. Whatever the answer, this small detail once again proves the genius of Leonardo da Vinci, his unmatched ability to turn a simple portrait into a masterpiece that still compels us to look twice. As always, I'll be reading your interpretations in the comments. Thank you for watching until the end, and don't forget to check out the link in the description.